Hi, my name is Kim Lewis. I'm the Chief Product Officer for Shibumi, and I'm excited today to step you through some of our plans for the product and to share with you how we prioritize the different enhancements that we introduce to the product. So first I'll start with a slide that should look familiar if you've already watched the keynote session that Bob Namias and Mark DiGirolamo delivered. When we think about strategy execution, we generally are always thinking about organizations following a very generic path. They start with setting goals, they move to generating ideas to achieve the goals, they define a business case to execute the ideas, and they prioritize the ideas. Once they identify the prioritized ideas to implement, they then execute and track the progress of those ideas. And then ultimately they're making sure that the anticipated results are the results they're actually achieving. So when we think about how Shibumi fits into that space, first of all, we acknowledge that there's a lot of products out there that can help with the different steps in this process. What Shibumi offers then is the holistic view across the whole life cycle there. So we take advantage of the business planning, the project execution, and the analytics and BI solutions that you may have already invested in, and we provide a holistic perspective over top of that to ensure that you're looking at the total value achievement from your investments. For partners, many of our partners have taken advantage of Shibumi to then build their own solutions based on their own unique, repeatable methodologies for different use cases. And with Shibumi's configuration capabilities, they'll turn around and deliver their solutions to the clients who may further customize and configure the solutions. So it's the flexibility of the Shibumi platform that allows for that customization and allows for partners to have multiple solutions to offer to their clients. From a client perspective then, you may have multiple Shibumi solutions. They may be things that you've built on your own or things that different partners have provided to you. You may have other solutions that are running your programs. One of the challenges when we have these very large organizations is that they don't have that view of all of their programs and how the achievement is being attained across all of those programs. That EPMO layer that really gives you the visibility holistically. So Shibumi can not only offer the distinct use cases for example, for an automation COE or a PMI type solution, but can also provide that EPMO layer that looks across all of your solutions and pulls data and aggregates it up to ensure that your key performance metrics are being represented. We also mentioned that Shibumi is looking across all of these solutions. That means that we're integrating often with some of the other solutions in your technology stack. If you have a special interest in that, Mark DiGirolamo, our Chief Customer Officer, is going to be delivering a session specifically highlighting some of the different integrations that we've done, and it would be a great session to see if you're interested in what we can do from an integration perspective. So with that backdrop on what we're trying to offer to the world, we take a look at our product and divide it into focus areas. On this slide, you're seeing across the top the focus areas that are primarily the user interface or the user experience focus areas. And across the bottom, it's the logic, it's the under the hood capabilities to both provide workflow logic, permissions, etc., as well as to package and maintain and scale your solutions. So what I'll be doing today is stepping through each of these, beginning first with user experience. And on each of these focus areas, I've defined then our objectives to achieve for the focus area and what product enhancements we're planning to introduce to satisfy those objectives. So really with user experience, and this is a very general term, very general category, we want Shibumi to be easy. We want Shibumi to be intuitive. We want it to be modern, and we want people to enjoy working with this product. So we have a number of enhancements listed on the right. I'll just highlight a few. We will be providing a login page. That's the first thing people see when they come to Shibumi. So we want to make sure that login page is visually simple, modern, etc. We also selected a new design system this year and have plans to upgrade all of our fonts, our icons, our spacing, our headers, etc. So you'll see that coming through the course of the next few quarters, actually. New participant window, new notifications queue. We have had the notifications queue for a while. When Shibumi sends an email, you don't just need to see it in your Shibumi, your mail inbox. It'll actually show up in the notifications queue within Shibumi as well. There are some gaps that have made that less valuable to people than we would like. So we'd like to plug some of those gaps. Guided help, we'd like to provide you with the ability to define custom help for your solution that will step people through how to use your specific solution. This is less about the clickology of Shibumi and more about the way your solution works and what you need your users to pay attention to. We've had a number of clients ask for integration to PowerPoint or better printing capabilities, so we'll enhance the output capabilities of Shibumi as well. And lastly, we're going to continue to evolve our support for our global client base with some better date formatting, number formatting, translation capabilities. For each of the focus areas, I've also highlighted a few of the items to demonstrate some of the work in progress activity that we have. The first one that I've done here is a theme changes that we're making. So many of these are subtle. You know, we have introduced a new, in the example on the right, you're seeing a work in progress screenshot. And we've introduced a new font. We've introduced darker tab highlighting. We've shortened the header space to give more real estate back to the applications. Less subtle, we moved the participant window to the top right and kind of collapsed it with all of the actions up there. And we've introduced the avatar circles for the participant window, so you'll see some representation of who actually has access to the work items. We also plan to upgrade all of the icons. That's not yet done in this work in progress screenshot. We're not changing the icons. They won't be unfamiliar to you, but they'll have a more modern look and feel when we're done with this change. When we finish the theme enhancements, the plan is to provide a opt-in capability for the first few months so that you can plan to your users when to introduce the new look and ensure that change is managed in a healthy way for them. Ultimately, we will sunset the old UX, so we'll be sure to announce the timing for that and give you the opportunity to manage that with your users. So that's the theme enhancements. Another thing that I mentioned is that we'll introduce a new login page. This is the first stop. This is the first place that people see Shibumi. So our plan is to have a very simple paged prompt. So on the first page, you'll put in your email address, click next, put in your password, sign in, or email address, log in with SSO, and we'll pass the email over to the identity provider. So it allows us to have that much cleaner SSO flow. It allows for kind of a very simple modern look for just the standard credential authentication approach. But we're also taking advantage of the right side of the page to be able to share information from Shibumi, to share marketing materials, to share announcements of our virtual summit, for example. So it gives us an opportunity to communicate with our end users in a way that we haven't had previously. And the last thing I'll highlight, I mentioned that we want to make the notifications feature a more valuable feature for everyone. So first of all, we are enhancing it to include all emails. Previously, you had most emails, but your discussion thread emails didn't show up in the notifications queue. They will going forward. We want to provide better queue management. Another challenge that people had is that you had to delete your notifications individually. Now you'll be able to bulk select and delete in a bulk action capability. And the last thing we've done is we're grouping by time frame so that you have the ability to find things a little bit more easily as well. So with those enhancements, we think we're going to take the notifications queue up a notch and ensure that it's more valuable. Oh, I'm sorry. The one other item is that we will be in real time updating the number of unread notifications in your queue rather than requiring a page refresh to show that. Okay, so with that, I'll move on to forms and layout. Next focus area And our objectives with forms and layout is really to provide more capability there, more control over the layout, how granularly you're spacing things on the page, more elements to use, different types of form fields, different types of charts, etc., and the ability to group them together into single containers. So over on the right, some of the product enhancements that we're planning on are the lookup fields and the new elements, basically a library of new elements, the ability to say that a field is required and how that should behave in Shibumi, association fields and dependent pick lists. These are already introduced. The light pink coloring on the right-hand side indicates that the feature has either already been introduced or partially been introduced. Association fields have been introduced. It allows you to associate two work items, and dependent pick lists allows you to specify from one pick list what should show up as options in the next. We want to introduce session data so that you can define filter sections, and with one section on a page, filter the content on the rest of the page. Calculated icons, which icon should be displayed. That could be a status indicator on its own, rather than having people pick from a pick list to get an icon. You can have a different icon that's sized differently, that may or may not have a background color, might be transparent, etc. Chained forms, we get a lot of requests for intake forms. The way to kick off a work item in Shibumi, they want to fill out an intake form that then creates the work item. And it's much like, the question on the first form decides what the next form should look like. So we'll provide that capability. The concept of header sections. So define the section once and then centrally manage it. And if you want to add content to it, you can manage it in one place and use that section then on every tab, for example, so that you can have that header type concept at the top of a page. We have the concept in Shibumi of sections, and the idea for the next bullet is that you might want to put the sections together and have a single container for multiple sections. And then lastly, condensed and standard layout options, which manages your real estate a little bit better. So let's talk about a couple of these in more detail. I'll start with that condensed and standard layout. In the top screenshot, you see the condensed layout with very little gutter between the sections. And that's ideal when real estate is precious, when you really need to use every inch of space on your layout. The standard layout provides a wider gutter. It's a little bit easier to consume visually because you've spaced the content out and given the eye a chance to collect that piece of information. We use the standard layout as our default everywhere except for on presentations, because we know that your slides are often full of information and need all of the real estate they can have. You, of course, can switch your slides to a standard layout if you don't want the condensed layout there. Associations. We were really excited this year when we introduced associations. It allows you to specify that a particular work item, let's say an RPA opportunity, is associated with a particular territory. So I want to see all of the opportunities that are associated with the European territory. I want to see all the opportunities in North America. I can do that separately from a hierarchical view in Shibumi. I can now have a matrixed type program that allows me to aggregate value and data and information in different ways. So the first concept is simply that you can define an association between work items. The other concept represented on the right-hand side here is that concept of dependent pick list. So with an association, and since we defined the association user experience or UX to be a pick list concept, when I've selected my territory, my sub-territory options are filtered appropriately. So that ability to now define a dependent pick list is something people have asked for quite a while. And lastly, with associations, you no longer need to manage the contents of a pick list through the template. You can actually just create additional work items, and those become the new options in the pick list. So it's additionally provides that capability. I'll jump in now into some of our visualizations that we've provided this year. So with visualizations, there are so many different ways that clients have asked us to represent data, and these are charts. These are different formatted sections. I would like to see my content with an icon on the left or an icon on the right. So being able to answer to those requirements with visualizations and a quick way to build these sections and provide configurability of them for our clients was a key goal of ours. We also wanted to provide a very efficient way to feed data to these sections, so with data sources serving the data. The visualizations that we've already provided include a couple of different button options, an achievement card, status card, item details. Queued up are the chevron and a Gantt chart. So let's take a quick look at those visualizations. In the screenshot on the right, I've got a few different visualizations represented. First, I'll highlight the achievement cards, which is this row here in the middle. With the achievement cards, you can see you can define a value and its progress towards a goal. You can include an icon or not include an icon. You can opt not to include that progress. There's some additional capabilities here. I could have additional annotation in the bottom left and right with some detail explaining what the values represent. So the achievement card provides a very nice graphical representation. The icons are from the Font Awesome public library of icons, so there's quite a few options there as well. The color coding is completely configurable. They're really fun to play with, the achievement cards. Status card in the bottom left. First of all, you get a red, yellow, green type status indicator to indicate whether the work item is on track, in danger, in need of attention, or at risk. You can provide a status update with an update status link. That is managed by permissions, so maybe only the owner of the work item should be able to update the status. And you will annotate who updated the status and when, so you always have kind of that running history of your status updates. Down in the bottom right, I've got an item details card. On this card, you can have up to 10 pieces of information from your work item that you expose out in a kind of summary detail format here. So, and then in the top right, I've got a button that allows me to set a value. When I set the value, it's actually triggering a business rule that will progress us through the life cycle stage of the work item. So just a few of the visualizations that we've provided thus far. More to come. I'll move on to tables. This is a big focus for us. We want to improve our tables to provide different tabular options to address the different usage patterns. Sometimes you need a very clean, very simple table, can be read-only or may have some small capabilities. Maybe one column is an updatable column. Other times you need a spreadsheet. Other times you need the full capability to group and aggregate and pivot and have all of that available to you. And when you have that spreadsheet, you often want to have it fill your whole real estate of the screen. So our objectives is to be able to address those different usage requirements, to ultimately combine our existing list and view. So we have today the concept of a list where you add items and a view where you can see all of the existing items. We want to get that consolidated into one tabular section, or one of several that fit different usage patterns. We want to make sure that the tables stay configurable at design time. So when you're an app admin and you're defining a tabular section, you should be able to specify what the header row looks like, which columns might be bolded, etc. And then we want some capability for an end user. So when an end user is looking at the data in the table, they might want to be able to filter or hide or aggregate different columns as well. So with our product enhancements then, we'll be introducing that simple read-only table capability, add on to that with some small update capabilities as the next bullet, and then that feature-rich spreadsheet table that will provide a lot more control on traditional spreadsheet style control over your data. We want to make sure that these tables are globally aware so that we support the correct data formatting globally. And adjacent to this, but not specific to the tabular section, is today we add new content to Shibumi through a list section. We want to remove that concept. We want to allow you to add items from anywhere in Shibumi, and when you're adding the items, you'll be able to give it the context where it should be added. So we've dropped that here on the table section as well, but it actually is something we'll be pulling out of tables. So just a quick look. For our Shibumi RPA solution, we defined a prototype just to start to build out the requirements and get a sense of what we want to do for these tabular sections. And what I'm showing here on the right-hand side is a screenshot of our RPA solution, the opportunities table, which is a fully deployed prototype. And I would categorize this as a simple read-only table. None of the columns are updatable directly in line. There is an action button. I can click on the right. I can sort my columns using the column headers. We have the nice pill representation for different columns, hyperlinks. I can filter this table from a separate filter section on the page. So quite a few different capabilities built into this prototype that drove some of the requirements that we'll be building out for the more generic tables that we'll be offering going forward. All right, lastly, in this user experience row is our mobile client. We want to improve our mobile offering. So today people can use their mobile device and they can get to Shibumi going through the browser on the mobile device. And certainly we won't be taking that away. You'll always be able to do that. But we'd like to provide a mobile application that can be downloaded from an app store that will allow users to have a little bit more capability there. So we'd like to take advantage of mobile authentication technologies, through login with a thumbprint or login with a face recognition. We'd like the notifications capability, the push notifications that come from mobile, and single click actions. So just on the right here, some of representing Shibumi in the mobile device. We already have made it so that when you are in a mobile device, your content will stack vertically. So even though it was laid out horizontally, when you come to mobile, it'll stack vertically. We're going to increase the ability for the biometric authentication and push notifications, etc. So now we'll get down to the second row in business logic. With business logic, we want the ability to build to configure an application. So if it were simply layout and text fields and moving icons around on a page, that's one thing. But when we want to have permissions and editability and visibility defined on that page, and when we want to have workflow that will progress a work item forward based on a threshold that's been breached or a time frame that has elapsed, you need to have business logic. So within Shibumi, we provide business logic through our expression language, through our business rules, and through functions that we make available as well. So the plans for the expression language, one of the things that people often do is they'll send a notification as part of some event has occurred in your life cycle of your solution, and you send a notification, and maybe your notification is the status has changed to red. It's important it would be perhaps more valuable if you said the status was green and has changed to red, or the status was yellow and has changed to red. So the ability to reference the old value of the status in that notification is something that we'll be introducing. We also introduced already the ability to reference the modifier, meaning the person who triggered that business rule. So Kim Lewis changed the status from yellow to red. And we want to also, with our expression language, provide the ability to allow for dynamic field labels, tab labels, column headers in our tabular sections. So when we talk about, in tying this back to some of the other things we discussed, if we talk about defining a required field, perhaps it's required early in the life cycle and optional later. It'd be nice if the dynamic field label could indicate that it's required early, and then once it's no longer required, have it change that indication. Business rules, a couple things that we've introduced already. Setting a start date for the time business rules, creating an item. So when you've selected or maybe again, when a threshold has been breached, a value threshold, a time threshold, that should trigger a notification item or a status item or something to get created. The ability to set a value to a role through your business rule. So because you selected the European region, the approver for this work item is Kim Lewis. The ability to set related values. So I've changed a value in one place, and all of the related items should also have that value change. Think about a deadline at a top level should trickle down to all of the child items. And then another request that we've had recently is the idea that you want to schedule and export. So a lot of our clients are doing snapshots of data per time, per week, per month. And they take it at exactly noon on the second Tuesday or something along those lines. With a scheduled export, you can define that as a business rule so that you don't have to make sure that a person actually clicks the export button at that time. On the far right here, I've got the list of functions that we've provided this year, and we'll continue to add functions. Honestly, those are added on demand. As clients are telling us they need a new function, we've been adding them. So the ability to add months or round the value or determine the number of work days between two dates, etc., are all things that were client requested that we introduced. The only highlight I have for the business logic is to take advantage of that focus area to mention that we did update our Shibumi support site this year. So within our support site, you can get a quick reference list of all of our expressions, drill down in to get a little more detail about them. Our site is very much a reference tool. It's not going to step you through how to build an RPA program. But if you're looking for detail on the add months function because you want to use that in your RPA program, it's a great resource for that. Okay, so the next focus area is data sources. And with data sources, we really want to provide an efficient, performant way to retrieve data and to serve it to those visualizations that I mentioned. You're starting to see a lot of these things are intertwined. By providing that data to the visualizations and restricting which data we retrieve, we can be more performant. We can be more explicit in which data we're sharing out with both app admins and end users. So we're providing a wizard that will step you through building the data source. And then we'll have a library that allows you to manage and maintain it and assign permissions to it. And ultimately, we'll also enhance our GraphQL API so that you can leverage the data sources through integrations as well. So these are early mocks. These are not work in progress screens yet. But the concept here for a data source wizard is that you define which data source, whether it's a new data source or whether you're going to use an existing one, what template to retrieve data from, what values to retrieve, is there additional detail you need to provide about those values, do you want to filter the content in any way, and then ultimately saving the data source so that now it can be referenced and reused by any of your sections. So with modules, what we want to provide is the ability to capture the best practices that and already built capability and incorporate it into your solutions. So first step of that is to provide documentations of these capabilities. A classic example of this would be some of the integrations we've done. I'll do another plug for Mark DiGirolamo's integration session for you to review the integrations that we've already delivered. We also just want to make it easier to document your solutions and ensure that as you are maturing them and evolving them, you have the ability to track the changes that were introduced. So the other product enhancements that are highlighted here, including better metadata descriptions and tags for your business rules, for example, auditing your template modifications. We get that question a lot. How can I see what changes were made between each publish? And we don't have an easy answer for that. We can certainly track it down, but it's a lot more tedious than it should be. So providing that level of detail and auditing capability, providing the ability to understand where things are used, where things are referenced, so that you can understand the impact of a change. The other product enhancement mentioned here is the ability to maintain our metrics from a template. That was a huge step forward for us this year. Previously, when you added a metric, when you added a work item, the metrics were branched so that they became unique to that work item, and you couldn't change them centrally from the template without a little bit of Shibumi magic going on in the background. So now it's very easy to maintain your metrics directly from your template, just as it is anything else that you've defined on your template. So for the modules focus area, what I highlighted here are the documented integration modules. We have a number of them. Jira, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, Power BI, PlanView, ServiceNow, Tableau, and UiPath are all integration options that are live with our client bases, clients, and that we have full documentation for. So as I mentioned, first step is the documentation. Longer term, we'll have that kind of automated drop this module in concept going forward. A next focus area is a big one, apps. We've been talking about apps for a while. The idea here is today in Shibumi, you have a collection of templates that form your solution. And that collection of templates is grouped to form your application, but managed individually as templates. So even down to if I want someone else to work with me on my solution, I need to grant Mark DiGirolamo access to each of my templates individually to have him help me. So the first step with apps is collecting those templates into a container, and the permissions to the app and the publishing of the app would publish all of the templates. You never have to worry that you didn't publish a change on one template, so now a change on another template won't work. You can define settings and permissions and roles that are specific to your app. So by defining the app container and putting the templates in the container, we're taking that first step. The next step then is to be able to provide upgrades and overrides of the app. So version 2 of your RPA solution is ready. You can introduce it as an upgrade to version 1 for your clients. So I think I hit on the objectives there, the product enhancements, then the app container, the management of permissions, being able to package up the app holistically for distribution, getting to app branded emails. So if your solution sends an email and a business rule notification, being aware that it came from the RPA solution versus the PMI solution, and appropriately branding the email for that notification. App-specific homepages and app-specific help links. We've taken some big strides already in both of those areas, and we'll continue to evolve those as we get the app containers. And then I mentioned the full publishing versus the individual publishing and the ability to upgrade. So let's talk about the app-specific homepages. So today, when you authenticate into Shibumi, we go through a decision tree. Do you have a personal homepage defined? So you may have a particular work item that you use all the time. If you do, you can go to your silhouette on the navigation sidebar, open up your settings, and define a personal homepage. And every time you click on the home button, it'll take you to that homepage. Every time you authenticate into Shibumi. If you don't have a personal homepage, if your enterprise administrator has defined homepages, and this is where you can have an application-specific homepage. So if I have my PMO executive dashboard only available to the C-levels in my organization, I've defined that as a homepage, and then I've defined a digital transformation dashboard that's available to everyone. When my C-levels authenticate in, they'll see the PMO executive dashboard because that's from top to bottom order here. And when another employee, an analyst, authenticates in, they'll go directly to the digital transformation. Now, assuming that they have access to those dashboards. If they don't have access, we'll always just land on the Shibumi default homepage. So we have a capability today for you to define the application-specific dashboards and the users that will have access to them. The app containers, what you're seeing on the right-hand side are the work in progress screenshots. So the concept of the app container is you'll now have an icon in the navigation sidebar representing apps. Probably won't be this icon, but it'll be an icon representing apps. And then you'll see your inventory of applications within your enterprise. When you drill down into an application, you'll get to the application detail. You'll see the templates, you'll see roles, sections, the other settings that we expose at the application level. Going back up to the app inventory, I can install a new app. I can create an app from scratch. When I create an app from scratch, I could create the templates within the app from scratch, or I could upgrade or import the app from a file, if I'm pulling it in from another enterprise, for example. I can also export my app out. It'll take all my templates, all my settings, etc. So all of this still very much work in progress, but we are excited to get it shared out. It's going to be a great step forward. One last thing to mention here, when we do introduce apps, the plan at this point is that all of the templates in your current enterprise will get dropped into a single app, and you will from there be able to separate them out into individual apps if it's appropriate to do so. Otherwise, they'll all be in that single app container for you. Last product focus area is our security and scalability, which we always keep an eye on, of course. So we want to, one of the objectives we had this year is to provide greater self-service capabilities. So we have the ability to check the number of page views or the authentication attempts through our API, but we don't provide those in standard reports that are easy to just click on and run. And we wanted greater user management capabilities as well. So a couple product enhancements, taking bulk action on users. We enhanced the IP address tracking to handle different network configurations. Provide an authentication report and a page view usage report to our admins. Provide the audit history through our GraphQL API. It's not yet available through there. And then to improve the export UX. That was a key area when people were trying to do those snapshot exports of a large amount of data. The performance wasn't as good as we would like. So a couple things that we did there to talk first about that export service. We actually separated it out. It's no longer processed by the same server that processes everything else in Shibumi. So we have an export service that we call to when you click on the export option. You'll get notification that the export request has been accepted, and ultimately when it's finished, you'll get notification that it's ready for the exported file is ready for download. One of the benefits of this is that you can continue to work while the export is happening, and you can just wait for it. You'll get both a notification through this banner message as well as through email that the export's available to you. In addition to the export service, we did do an improvement on user management where now you can bulk select users through the enterprise admin interface and disable accounts, or actually you can bulk make them administrators, enterprise admins as well. So that takes us through all of the product focus areas, and the typical question I get when this is a live roadmap session is, well, when are these things coming out? It's all good stuff, but when will we get it? So on this slide, and I know it's a bit of an eye chart, I've summarized year to date what we've already delivered, what we're working on. So we're coming up on tail end of Q3 here. We always go by calendar quarters for our roadmap. So tail end of Q3, the one item that we are planning to finish up and release before the end of September is the business rule tags. Being able to tag your business rules, again, that's for better documentation of your solutions. So I won't go through, obviously we just went through a lot of these. Going into Q4, our focus will be to get the new user experience, themed user experience out that you can opt into, to introduce phase 1 of the app containers, to provide the ability to export and import your apps, which will allow you to do that upgrade of a version of your app, to introduce that scheduled export business rule, bring out the new login page, and to get the old value added to our expression language. Q1 and Q2, so first half of next year, will be focused on the data sources, tabular sections, providing that ability to have session data and filters that would filter all of the content on the layout, the new visualizations, the Gantt and the chevron, the dynamic headers, fields, tab labels, calculated icons, descriptions for your business rules, the additional capability for the notifications queue. You'll notice that we will have the discussions queue. You now have discussions in your notifications queue. The timing of when I'm recording this and when you're watching this, between now and then, discussions will be released into the notifications queue. And we also want to provide the ability to publish your dashboards so that they become a printable tool through an Adobe type product. That's a lot to look at, a lot to cover. So I want to leave you with the final perspective. When we think about our roadmap, typically each quarter we have a focus, we have a 2 to 3 items that we focus on. These items are items that, for example, when I'm looking at Q4, the UX and the app containers, we're actively working on those in Q3. So we focus on the quarter that will deliver them, but these are kind of the big ticket items that we expect to release each quarter. And it's typically 2 or 3 that we are able to deliver. So Q4 is the UX, the app containers, and the ability to upgrade apps through an export-import function. First half will be the data sources, the 3 different tabular sections, and getting a mobile application released.